It's the latest sensation that's sweeping the extremely niche esoteric community that's much smaller than a nation. Or it was, maybe I'm too late. It's slap chopping. Everyone's doing slap chop videos, so I guess this is mine. This is a beast Snagga boy. He is in the process of being slap chopped. For those unfamiliar, slap chop is taking a model, applying zenithal highlights. Currently I'm doing that with gray and an airbrush, but you can use a spray can too. Dry brushing white after, and then adding contrast paints to paint fast. I haven't watched the full video where Rob, the founder of Slapchop, explains why it's called that, but there's probably a reason. As is tradition, once you've got your gray on there, make sure you airbrush a bunch of white on top. Too much white, maybe even, so that all of the gray is no longer visible. Go hog wild with your dry brush. Just get everywhere. Leave no one alive. A fun tip I learned semi-recently is if you wet the back of your dry brush, but then dry the front part as per normal, you won't get that dusty effect that dry brushes often produce. So yeah, just like dunk your brush in water, wipe all of that off, then dunk it in paint, wipe almost all of that, and then dry brush as normal. Here I'm applying some Blood Angels Red all over the skin. Using contrast medium to thin this out will help you a lot. I tend to batch paint everything I paint, but especially with Slapchop, doing a bunch of models at once tends to make them look a little more uniform and take less time. Being pretty loose and extremely heavy with her contrast medium, I just go over almost everything with brown if it's not the skin. I alternated between Gore Grunt of Fur and Snakebite Leather, and I painted their pants and the metallic areas with Black Templar. The metallic areas being painted black is just to base coat them so that we can dry brush over them. Part of the reason my army is painted this way with a lot of like similar tones is that it makes it easier to be kind of sloppy when painting. As you can see here, I'm like blending the black and brown together to make a gradient, and one of the most frustrating parts about contrast is when you like accidentally go over a line and it looks bad and not clean, and this is deliberately breaking that so that you're generating gradients instead of just trying to paint everything as clean as possible. So conventionally with slap chop and painting of contrast paints, this is the point at which your model is done, but I painted this model pretty dark deliberately in order to be able to dry brush on top, and I think it looks better than just putting paint directly from the contrast paint pot on and then calling it a day. I'm using a mixture of a few different browns and also Wraithbone and putting it on everywhere, including a little bit on the face. When you get brighter and mix more and more Wraithbone in, it looks fine to put on a color that's like adjacent to the color you're dry brushing on top of. So like the light brown I think looks pretty good dry brushed on skin. After this, I put a pretty heavy dry brush of Warplock bronze over all the metal areas that we had base coated black. I repeated the process with natural steel on top, leaving a lot of the Warplock bronze showing underneath. Ironbreaker by Citadel or Plate Mail Metal by Army Painter are pretty good substitutes here if you don't have this paint. To break up the metals from being one boring solid color, I dry brushed a little bit of Vallejo bronze. I don't know anything else like this paint from another line. It's like kind of a weirdly unique color that I really recommend and use all the time. I dry brushed Corax white over the fur with the same goal, just trying to break it up so it doesn't feel like one solid color fur everywhere, and there's different color patches that make it interesting from far away to look at. This is the step where things get fancy, maybe too fancy for a slap chop speed painted video. We have our Mars Black oil paint and odorless thinner, and we're going to use that to create some washes in the recesses of the weapons, and this is followed up by stippling some very bright Vallejo silver on the edges of the paint to show where paint chips would happen. Or in the case of these commandos, I painted alongside the beast Snaggas, just indicating where the rusty metal might have some of its original color left over and create contrast on the weapon that breaks it up. And if you don't own oil paints or don't want to, using known oil to just trace like the contours of each weapon is similar, honestly. I like the oils because I'm a fancy boy who spends too much money on tools, but known oil will get the job done just fine. The teeth were picked out with arid earth. I really don't have much else to say about that, but I recorded a lot of footage of me painting teeth, and the amount of footage I have of me painting the teeth versus things I have to say about them is disproportionate. If I was really pressed for time, this is the point at which I would call them done. I'm happy with them here, and there's always more you can do, but these are fine. This is like slap chop, and well, it's not. It's like more than slap chop. This is the point at which it can still be considered slap chop. I freehanded a bunch of checkers on various parts of their weapons. I start by drawing an outline of a square and then filling it in after, and then just kind of going one by one across the line. These are orc checkers, so they don't have to be super clean. I rewatched Lord of the Rings recently and remembered how sick Uruk-hai are, so I wanted to give them some Uruk-hai inspired face paint. I wanted to do the full like White Hand of Sauron thing on them at first, but I felt like it was really hard to make that so like clear on heads this small, so I ended up just kind of tracing the contours of their face. With the exception of a few like this guy, who I wanted to just draw like whatever abstract shape I could that felt like it would be cool on top of. I use this AK Terrains Desert Sand on all my orcs. All the like AK interactive basing stuff is super good. I use it quite a bit. And outside of some minor touch-ups, filling in a couple extra details just because I had time, and adding the plants to the bases, that's about it. I love Slapchop. I think it's a great start to painting a model that you want to elaborate on further, and it allows a lot of people to get their armies done quick. I think like whenever people complain about contrast paints or airbrush, it's easy to forget that prior to the year like 2013, 90% of armies that you'd see in a random game store were gray plastic, and now I feel like the vast majority of armies I see, both casually and tournament events, are painted to a pretty surprisingly good standard, considering that a lot of the time they're just painted by people that are just like gamers, capital G gamers. I think that's really cool. I think it's encouraged a lot of people who thought that the hobby aspect and painting part of the game was too intimidating to try it, and that is absolutely a good thing. I hope you like this video. Thanks for watching. I have a bunch of other hobby content if you haven't seen my other videos, and there will certainly be more videos about speed painting and orcs in the near future. So thanks for coming by.